Okay, so the heading, hiring is broken, or the trust in hiring is broken. It's a little bit dramatic, but I wanted to get you guys on the call. So hence it was a little bit risque. Hopefully no one is offended. But we'll talk around rebuilding validity, how do we rebuild the trust, how AI and trust work together, and then how all of that hopefully then lands on our jobs platforms and the broader recruitment. So we're going to start out. Let's talk about the problem, what the fallout is. It's a little bit negative to kick off, but bear with me. We've got to break it down first before we try and build it back up again. Throughout the presentation, I've tried to include some stats, also just to give it a bit of validity. It's not just my perception or my impression of what is happening in the market. These are factual things that have been researched from the likes of LinkedIn to Glassdoor and others over the last 3 to 4 years. So if we're talking about trust and hiring in itself works and it is achieved. We all know this, and the systems do operate. But there is a fundamental breakdown in the trust behind those systems, as can be seen by something along the lines of 53% of candidates say they don't trust the recruitment process. Employers trust less than half of the CVs they receive. With AI coming on board, I see it getting even worse, and we've had similar feedback where employers, because of the AI generation of CVs and it being done so quickly, even further distrust the nature of CVs. So how did we get there? If we look at the reasons that might have caused that, there was a rush to scale. So, everyone built these platforms. There was an overwhelm of candidates looking for jobs across the board. So we lost that connection. ATS systems were brought in, searching for match algorithms, keywords, etc. So that human touch and connection was lost, and speed trumped the substance throughout that process, which made matching very mechanical. We've got a matching process and algorithm, very much data-based, obviously, in our platform. It's not perfect. We have seen many roles where candidates move all the way through to hired stage, and they had a 23% match. So matching is great. It adds just one layer of information, but we definitely can't rely on pure data-based matching. So all of this led to recruitment and hiring becoming quite transactional with that disconnect, as I said. I mentioned here around friction. I'll talk a little bit later around how I believe hiring doesn't need less friction. Hiring needs more friction, provided each friction point adds value into the process. Okay, so this is a summary around why we lost trust. A big thing that happens at scale and with volume is that you get visibility. So we see all the candidates, we see all the jobs, but with that comes a lot of noise. A key thing that I want to try and drive home today is visibility without validity is a big cause as to why there's been a trust breakdown in hiring. So the big aim is to bring back that validity. What is the concrete underlying fundamental of that human, of that CV, of that job, of that employer, not just the data that's underlying the application or the job offering. Okay, so here's just a couple more stats just to reinforce that breakdown of trust that we believe or see has occurred. Employers can't trust CVs or job boards. 70% of employers either don't trust the CVs or the claims therein, or the facts that candidates are stating in interviews. And in the vice versa, or the inverse of that, candidates, when they log on to job boards, because of jobs expiring or even ghosting happening at the employer level, 48% of job seekers doubt that job ads are real. Now that for us as owners of jobs boards is quite, it's fundamentally something that we need to change. We need to be able to shout it from the rooftops that if there's a job on our platform, it is a valid job, that we know that there's a client behind that is actively hiring. One of my big frustrations is jobs that are posted, but there's no real hiring intent behind that. So we need to keep an eye on, the practice of hiring. Is it being done ethically, or are employers out there sort of driving traffic to their site or trying to create talent pools outside of an actual job that exists? For recruiters, I'm not sure how many recruiters per se are on the call, but there's going to be a long tail of recruiters coming about now due to the economic circumstances around the world. And unfortunately, recruiters have acted as or been caught in the middle between the distrust between employers and candidates. So what then happened as an overreaction to the distrust? Um, More and more hoops and layers were brought into the process. We're seeing longer lead times in hiring. Employers are insisting on assessments and assessments that are almost becoming unpaid project work. I recently posted something, anything longer than 2 hours becomes too much. And I think, as intermediaries between candidate and employer, we need to keep that in check and ensure that assessments are fair and are actually being completed. So there's a stat there on the right, 40% of assessments were abandoned during the process. Now, I know employers might argue, okay, well, that weeds out the bad candidates. Yes, it does. But we're also seeing some of the top candidates not being prepared to complete excessive assessments. And that's having a real knock-on effect in that you're actually losing top talent in trying to do that. So yeah, candidates are disengaged. And we've tried to automate trust using big data, matching algorithms, big platforms. But that's actually had a knock-on effect where the human touch has been lost. Okay, is everyone still good? That was the bad part. Hopefully from here we rebuild the hope and we look towards, how do we get this back? Okay, so people hire people. We can use algorithms to facilitate and to assist in that process, but ultimately it's human connection and humans that are making that final decision. As I say, recruitment should feel relational and not robotic. And companies that put their brand and their hiring process as a priority and at the forefront of what they're all about, they have a 70% better hiring quality. So a big part of our platforms needs to become brand centric. How are we allowing this employer to showcase their brand, to enable them to really connect with the candidates on the other side of that application? Okay, so as I say, we're still learning and we're experiencing this and trying to sort of see, all the things that drove us to pivot. And we experience all of those things as your call it traditional recruiters, and we experienced it firsthand. So when we decided to pivot, we thought, okay, let's decide on a few fundamental things that we need to look at in terms of changing this dynamic, and how do we change recruitment to trust, still using matching for the data process. But how do we validate that candidate? How do we showcase the human behind the CV? And then to my next point, there's a couple of goals. One is to kill email backwards and forwards, which we can all hope for, but I'm not sure it'll happen in our lifetime. And the other one is to kill the CV. So by that, I don't mean kill the CV, but allow something that allows for standardized comparison and to allow us to see the human behind that CV. With the ability that we have as these platform owners, and now using AI, which I'll get to, there's a lot that we can do without the CV to start introducing candidates to employers before they even need to open that document. There'll also be a lot around referrals and network-based hiring, and there's a big shift towards how do you tap into your network and use that to generate applications. Okay, so humanizing the candidate profile. I think I've spoken about the issues with CVs. We've all looked at enough CVs, I think, in the past to hopefully agree that it's a challenge comparing CVs, and how do we now look at changing that? So bringing in culture fit. AI has allowed us to use video analysis, voice analysis, the concept of upfront references. So this, again, speaks to the trust layer that we're trying to bring into platforms. So if you look at the traditional hiring process, it's normally only at point 99 that references are engaged to validate the hire. I believe there's a lot of value that we as platform owners can install into the process by saying, let's get these references upfront. Let's build it into our platform. Let's show the employer that this candidate has been trusted elsewhere before we trust them. So there's a lot of other platforms, Airbnb, Uber, etc., that that rating concept is key and critical to that. And AI again plays a big point in facilitating this. So it works both ways. I think a lot of employers miss the opportunity that when they are presenting job opportunities, it is their first touch point to thousands of eyeballs. And oftentimes those candidates are also clients of theirs. And I think we mentioned the stat, but 68% of job seekers say that the employer reputation influences who they're applying to and whether they are interested in the opportunity or not. So again, how do we do that? Video, founder-led branding. So there's a big move in the marketing space to be founder-led, but I think platforms can do a lot to enable their clients and employers behind those jobs to showcase a bit of personality. I think the typical job spec is dead, and let's look at ways that we can kind of incorporate the human touch again into the employer side. So we've got the humanization of the candidates and the humanization of the company, so that when they have that first interview, it doesn't seem like a foreign engagement. Right, network. Now, this is a big part of what I'm hoping to land today. I feel matching based on data was possibly 5 years ago. Where we see it now and where we see it going in the next 5 years is community-based referral and network-based hiring. So the trust element comes in when someone who the employer knows that candidate. So the whole concept of I know a guy who knows a guy who knows a cousin who was an engineer, I think is a really good way to try and get our platforms to leverage the network and community effect to enable almost a pre-introduction of a candidate before they simply apply. So if we just take Jobtech Alliance as an example, even if we all collaborate across Africa and build a cross-pollination of talent, there's a really good opportunity here for employers and candidates to be connected through referral and trust rather than relying on CVs, AI, and data and ATS matching. So yeah, referral hires 4 to 6 times faster. And because of that trust factor, historically have been shown to stay 45% longer at their hire than or at their employer than a typical recruitment process. What we've seen a lot of, because of this incentivization of referrals, it's happening quite casually, but employers will say to their team, probably via an internal email, we are hiring a head of marketing or engineering. We'll give 5,000 Rand or Naira, whatever the case may be, or $2,000 to whoever in our team who finds that next software developer or engineer. So that concept of internal referral incentive is a really great way to turn your team into recruiters for your brand. It has a bit of a knock-on effect on recruiters as an industry, given that people are now operating internally and activating their staff's networks. And I'll talk about where that spend is going. But what we've done with Crayon is to formalize that internal incentivization and then the tracking of the network, the sharing outwards, and then the incoming talent, and then a linking that. So almost like an affiliate marketing platform. So if you have an existing platform that's focused very heavily on matching, there's not many steps to build in this referral tracking tech so that you can start becoming an affiliate marketing platform outside of just jobs and applications. So there's massive opportunity, I think, for all of us to really tap into this trend, and it's extremely big in the US. Okay, so linked to that, the money is flowing in that direction. So employers, rather than immediately jumping to outsource, are saying, how do I take my cash, activate my network, activate my team? There's opportunity to either incentivize your network externally to say, anyone in the market who brings me a hire, we'll offer a couple $1,000s. You'll see this happening on LinkedIn with a lot of posts where people are offering incentives or doing it internally. So where's the money going? It's shifting from your traditional agencies to tools and to networks, and recruitment budgets going towards communities. Their thinking then being, and rightly so, moving the cost per hire downwards because of the fact that it's trusted and it's a referral. The trust per hire then increases. So yeah, 25% growth in referral tech spend by 2026 is forecast, which is right around the corner. So the challenge for recruiters, as well as I guess then the opportunity, as I said, there'll be a long tail of recruiters, I think, entering this market. It is a very low barrier to entry type industry. Unfortunately, the trust breakdown, and as I said, recruiters have been stuck in the middle. So recruiters coming into this market right now have an uphill battle to regain the trust of both the employer and the recruiter. So they depend on trust, and they need to instill trust in their processes. And ultimately, traditional recruiters rely on the platforms that we operate. So our platforms, if they are bringing trust to the table, will be picked up and used a lot by recruiters. So that's one of our big plays at Crayon, is to say, how do we service employers? Yes, that I think goes without saying. But how do we now collaborate with recruiters instead of compete with them, and provide them a trusted platform that they can put their roles onto the platform, and that gives the candidates the trust that this recruiter is operating with transparency all the way through to who their client is behind the scene. So, back to the topic of the discussion, going from matching to network platform, trust is a big, big element, rewarding relationships and connecting the data. I mentioned collaboration. So collaboration, even among someone like the Jobtech Alliance, I think we'd all be well placed to collaborate rather than to compete. And as I said, the freelancer recruiter population already is up 38% since 2020. Based on my LinkedIn feed, I think it's even higher now. And there's a lot of recruiters popping up. So we need to find ways to bring these recruiters onto our platform and to keep them there through the use of transparency and trust. Okay, I'm not going to speak too long around this. I think it's been implied in a lot of what I said. We were the traditional recruiter, albeit with a sexy website and a bit of a back-end system. And we changed because our overarching North Star, and I'll speak about this at the end because I want to invite all of you to join us on this, is to connect 1 million smiles by 2030. And how do we connect smiles? It's a hire between an employer and a candidate. And we could not scale on the traditional model, partly because of the nature of the model, but also some of the distrust that had come into it. So hence the pivot where it was more automated, allowed us to focus on, bringing that trust back into the platform, validation over visibility, and allowing the reach to get us to 1 million. So yeah, how's it going? I mean, it's hard to say, but locally we want to be seen as the go-to platform, at least in South Africa. I know on this call there's probably a lot more platforms out there that are doing super well up in Africa. And yeah, I'm sure there's lots to learn across everyone's different platforms that we've created. So all the things that I've mentioned is what we've tried to incorporate into it. Very big on referrals. We've made them trackable, reward introductions. We've got Crayon Bounty, so we've quantified that trust by offering incentives. Shared data, so the data and the transparency is inherent throughout the platform and the clients that we work with. The humanization of profiles is a massive part, so it's videos, AI analysis, and I'll talk about AI now, but there's I think people fear AI in that it erodes the human element, but we're seeing a lot of CVs that would have been thrown out because they are badly structured, that are saved and put forward to interviews because AI found the summary and the key aspects of that human and brought it to the fore. So there's a lot of AI work that's gone into how we've scaled that trust and that connection. Okay, so this is something that admittedly I kind of stumbled on, and I want to sort of elaborate a little bit further maybe after this talk. But if we combine AI, which we know is artificial intelligence, but keep the human intelligence in the mix, it brings together a trust index. So there's really a nice opportunity here for us as humans to bring in AI, but not to do it to drive volume and to drive matching. Yes, it'll be efficient, but if our overarching goal is to install trust and to improve trust and call it a trust index, the definition is there. I think it really, and it's something that I'm going to try and, distill, build into our roadmap or our dev roadmap. Is this adding to our trust index? So if we're using AI, let's bring in the human element to increase the trust. So a little catchphrase at the bottom, the humane model, and that's humans and machines working together. So maybe I can leave that with you when you guys are building and connecting. Let's try and increase that trust index. Okay, so the role of AI, as I said, AI summaries can often humanize CVs where the candidate themselves weren't able to articulate their skills and their experience. AI video, yes, it is maybe a conversation with a robot, but it's a video that that candidate would not have recorded in the traditional climate. So again, it gives them an opportunity for that employer or us as platform owners to meet and greet that candidate and to see the personality behind the CV. Big aspects with AI culture. I spoke a bit earlier, it was on the slides earlier, around culture add over culture fit, because culture ultimately is the sum of the parts. Each person that joins a team adds to that culture. So AI can't replace the human instinct, but it can turn us into data-driven, human-first, trust index builders, to go back to the previous slide. Okay, so jobs boards, which I think is more pertinent and relevant. And we were guilty and probably are still guilty of this. We chase reach, we chase visibility, and we aim to get people onto our site because that then allows us to close roles. But yeah, we sold and we do sell visibility. What I would challenge all of us to try and do is to build trust engines and deliver validity. So although we built on volume and reach, let's build towards the trust index. And I think our conversion will improve over time if we make that our North Star. So visibility gets you seen and validity gets you higher. And the market, as I said, is shifting to, and this again goes back to the referrals in the network, who's known, who can be trusted, and not just who is listed on the platform. So what a lot of AI and a lot of data and platforms like ours have enabled is big volume and quick matching. But that's actually created overwhelm for our clients. So I think a lot of clients almost would prefer fewer or lower volume, fewer candidates, but higher trusted validity of candidates in order to make a hiring decision. Okay. So I think a lot of this is summarized here, the economics of trust. Trust compounds efficiency. And although it sounds like a soft factor, I'm a typical A type, so talking about soft factors is maybe foreign to me, but trust is still profitable. Trust is a new performance metric, and it's actually becoming a hiring currency. So if you see trust and the soft factors in that light, it really can become something that is quantifiable. Linked back to the referrals in the network, 5 times faster, 45% higher retention. So I think in closing, our North Star, when we set out on the pivot, was to connect 1 million smiles by 2030. It is bold, it is out there, but I think with a collaborative approach, and hence the word together, if we track this metric, and maybe Maguire and Chris, we can look at doing this as a combined Jobtech Alliance, let's connect 1 million smiles by 2030 across our various platforms and make it a collaborative, community-based effort. That's it. Thank you, guys. If there's any questions, please shoot and fire away. One last thing, in the slide deck that I'm sure Maguire will share with everyone, a lot of the stats that I mentioned, as well as 50 others, I'm going to dump in here as an addendum. And there's a lot of really interesting things that really highlights the track record and history as to why I've said that I believe trust in hiring is at least as functional, and the direction that it's moving towards. But that I'm not going to bore you with in this talk.
Yeah, I think if you're in a physical room, we would give you a big round of applause. But I think with all the floating love emojis there, I think could tell like a lot of people like resonated with what you're talking about, and also on time. So it means we have time for questions. I see some have been posted on the chat. I think the first one we're seeing is around like how the data or experience shifted for your target audience when you moved to the sort of like the networked recruitment platform. That's first question. Yeah.
I think that the biggest benefit in bringing data into the process was the fact that we were able to expose that to the employers directly. So indirectly, the CV has been moved backwards, and people are using the videos, they're using the data to first assess the candidate, and then only looking at the CV to validate what's been put forward. So in that sense, that's how the data and the experience has shifted. Previously, we would share CVs, whereas now we are inviting clients, employers onto the platform the data is highlighting who the candidate is. The video is bringing the personality as a secondary layer. And then they are looking at the CV to say, okay, cool, that sounds amazing. Let's see what else this candidate has done. So I think that's been a big change in the pivot. She also asked about incentivize employers to use the platform. There's been a big, and it's a lot of work around marketing, and this is somewhere where we need to do better. But to highlight to employers that there are other alternatives in terms of maybe traditional recruitment, but also how you can work with traditional recruiters through a platform that enables it, and also how they can use their own team to hire. So we're not saying to you, spend money to hire, but give money to your team. We'll just act as the tool. So we've had to change our own mindset from saying, okay, we are recruiters, to saying we are just the tool to enable hiring. So we don't mind which tree you want to plant. We'll be the spade that digs the hole for you to make it happen. So that's been quite a big shift, but that's also been an incentive for employers to join. Sorry, Chris, I see you've got your hand up.
Okay. Go ahead, Chris.
Amazing. I mean, thanks so much for the presentation. It's really interesting. I shared a resource in chat of a blog we wrote 3 years ago, which you just transformed into life. Derek, it's worth it. It's called the smiling curve, and it has this kind of hypothesis that in the job tech sector, like value accrues to like both ends. Like in the recruitment sector, it would accrue to either like the infrastructure, which is exactly what you've done, or like kind of the niche recruitment. They're like old job matching function in the middle kind of dies, and you basically just presented this the real implementation of it. So and it's interesting just to kind of say out loud for anyone else in the room, like we've seen a similar sort of phenomenon happening in other parts of the job tech sector, where like we see kind of value accruing away from marketplaces to like either the like niche, companies that go deep in individual verticals, or like the ones that live in the infrastructure layer. Just understanding, like, maybe obviously you're in a relatively early stage of it and you're not yet a monstrous monopoly or a wonderful monopoly, but like one of the kind of implications of this is like understanding what it means for like the lay of the land in terms of jobs boards and recruiters. Do you kind of see it that like ultimately that like you guys aim to provide the one like infrastructural rails, and then there are more recruiters and you just have less of those kind of traditional job matching platforms in the middle? Or like, how do you think it impacts the ecosystem, I guess?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head, Chris. That has been our hardest challenge and remains our hardest challenge, is not the tech and the build, which I always thought it would be. It's the marketing positioning of what we are. And I'm sure a few others might have this issue around what is our platform? Are we a matching? Are we a recruiter? And because of that pivot, we've moved from saying we are recruiters with a sexy website to saying, okay, we are now the infrastructure. So, have we lost clients that looked at us as recruiters? And now we need to find the clients that look at us as infrastructure. So that has been really a hard part, is how do you position your platform in this market across that spectrum that you mentioned, from recruiter to infrastructure. What we're seeing and what we're trying to lean into is, and again, this is not meant to offend, but lazy hiring. So people do not want to post jobs. They do not want to log on to platforms and go through the process. They literally want to write a WhatsApp message and put it onto a community group and hope someone sends them someone that's relevant. So that's where the hiring has gone. There's such fatigue in the process that the investment in going through the process is minimal. So we've had to try and adapt, and again, use AI with integration to build specs and to create like capture WhatsApp posts to build an entire spec and to post that job. But yeah, I mean, if you ask me right now, we are going through a transition phase, servicing both sides of the market, but ultimately wanting to scale to the point where the infrastructure becomes the primary source of revenue and our North Star, and other recruiters can use us and use the infrastructure, and where needed, they can tap into our network of talent partners if they have a need for traditional recruitment. Yeah.
So we have a question from Lodovica. around, you talked about the referral-based network, sort of like edge, especially for employers, but also for like job seekers. But there's also the question about like whether these networks are, sort of like disadvantage some people, in the labor market. I think that's the bigger question that he's alluding to again.
Yeah, I mean that's very fair. I think we need to look at how do we build our referral engines, and maybe now leaning into the tech a little bit. Word of mouth is always there, but I think we need to do more to enable the referral to land where the less privileged individuals might be. So, be that on SMS referral or a WhatsApp-based thing or QR codes, on a billboard, or at the moment we've built it so it can be shared to social media, LinkedIn, Facebook, email. But oftentimes the strong candidate is not on those platforms. So yeah, I don't have the answers. I think more can be done to try and integrate that opportunity and find the connection between there's the work, there's the internship, what is that company and brand and our platforms doing to put that referral and then track that referral in a more public space. So yeah, I'm not sure in the African context, but possibly that sounds and looks like a WhatsApp share or something like that.
Maybe my question is, how do you go about making the companies, more visible? Because I do share the idea of, the people are also, the candidates are also vetting the companies. It's not really one-sided. So we do see, a bump when it comes to, people applying when they know the company. So how do you go about, making the companies more visible for candidates? Because at least in our case, they're the one paying, so you just cannot, easily just force them to do stuff, unlike the job seekers. So how do you go about that? And maybe my other question is, I don't know if it's too technical, but you mentioned about, voice and video. I don't know how you go about managing data and all those, people using voices and video. So maybe you can share a bit about that.
Okay, on that, sure. Thanks for the questions. On the tech side, the voice and the video, we've integrated quite extensively with AWS in terms of capturing the video, storing it, and then you fragment it into bite-sized chunks that allows for streaming type quality, so you don't bog your user down with playbacks. But yes, it is a bit technical, but we've integrated strongly with them, and the AI video will then be that next layer. Up until now, we've capped videos at 1 minute. So there's an application video. There is what we call a Crayon cam, which is an introductory elevator pitch, and then there's an employer video and a job specific video that can be added. The AI interviews will become a little bit more extensive in that's a 10 to 15 minute video recording. So we're busy exploring exactly how to optimize that. It's not easy. So yeah, the tech side of that is a lot of fun. The thing with the employers in terms of trying to incentivize them and get them to do that, I think, yes, we do sometimes struggle to get them to buy into the branding or the potential of the branding of their profile. But I think all we can do is show them case studies, education at the onboarding phase, try and show them what's worked and what hasn't worked, and examples of other brands that have done it well. So I think that FOMO or fear of missing out or seeing what others have done and they want to do the same has worked pretty well. So they see their competitor putting their YouTube showcase reel up on their company page and theirs isn't there. It's a good way to highlight why they're not getting applications. But you also touch on a really big issue that all of us face with platforms, and Airbnb faces as an example. The more and more we try and build in transparency and showcase our clients, the more and more candidates go directly to employers, right? Because they want to potentially bypass the platform to go direct to the careers page. And all we can do there is to try and do good enough a job as a platform so that the employer remains on platform. And if they get outreach directly, simply refers them back to Crayon or to your platform, because that is where they trust that the talent will be vetted and come through the funnel and have the video, and long-term potentially to white label our platform so that, company.com/careers is actually your platform white labeled on the back end and they pay a license fee. that's first prize for all of us. But that, to Chris's point, requires some sort of monopoly or some sort of scale. So that's I think where I think you would also want it to go, and that at least closes the loop. Candidate tries to go direct to employer, employer's page routes it back to you, everyone wins.
Good to connect, and yeah, really insightful presentation. And one thing I was trying to understand, you talked about humanizing profiles, and I know that one of the problems we have within the African continent specifically is the lack of data structure when it comes to resumes. Resumes are being created with AI, and recruiters also screen with AI. It's basically not ideal. So you spoke about videos. When you say videos, are you talking about on the profile? And what are we actually doing to have more robust profiles in terms of DNAs, psychometrics, to ensure that we can actually make more sense from profiles beyond just the name, the email, a CV upload, and so on?
Yeah, so the video would live directly on their profile. So if an employer or a client looks at an individual, it would have all of the data that you mentioned, but then the video acts as a further overlay. We've got something called a Crayon personality quiz. It's not a full-blown psychometric or assessment for various reasons, but it's a 100-question culture fit and culture add survey where we try to understand what is that individual's primary personality, secondary personality, and their top traits. And then we've also created something called a grit score, which kind of measures their tenacity and perseverance. But yeah, I think to your point, it's just about how do we also, from the way that we onboard our candidates, how do we almost make it obvious that the CV is not the primary thing that we're after. I think a lot of the historical builds have been apply, give us your CV, and you're off. That nowadays doesn't work. You need to almost like step flow it, get the core details, try and capture a video. You get the CV, but it's not the only item that's required. It does create that friction, so I'm aware of that, but it's the right, hopefully, kind of friction. And I think, as again, like I said, hiring needs friction. I think the likes of LinkedIn, Easy Apply, has led the market to believe that you simply click once or drop a CV that your application is gold. It's not going to differentiate you. So if we sell it to the candidates that this is your opportunity to differentiate, pop open your phone, take a 1-minute selfie video, tell us who you are. So again, you have to educate the user as to what is the benefit of doing the video rather than making it sound and look like fiction.
So when it comes to, I think you do have the platform, right? So do you consider yourself, because on the presentation you talked more about empathy for the employers and the job seekers as well. Do you consider yourself more on the tech side, or is it more there's some kind of intervention with humans as well? For example, it could be like recruiters or some kind of someone vetting them. So is there some kind of some aspect in that regard, or is it just purely platform?
It's both. It's I think of a nice phrase. It's tech first, but human driven. So we allow the tech to do its work and to present the candidates in a way that humans can then evaluate it efficiently. So the clients are the humans that log in and use the platform to do the evaluation with the guidance of what the system has shown them. Alternatively, we have our internal team and the network of talent partners that then acts as the human overlay to say, okay, out of the 200 matches and 100 applications and ranking them, etc., post-review, these are the 20 that we want the client to look at, and they're incentivized to do that via a bounty structure. So yeah, I mean, if I can give you a catchphrase, it's sort of tech first, human driven. But yeah, it is both. I admittedly tried to go too tech heavy at the outset, which led to a lot of the issues that I raised at the first part. But there is that human layer that needs to come in, both from a review point of view and also building platforms that allows the human to come through above the data.
I think, at least for me, this has been very, deeply valuable. And I think one key takeaway that I can brag about after this call, whenever I'm speaking to anybody, I can be like, sort of like the future platforms that win won't just connect people, but they'll make trust visible, verifiable, and scalable, right? And that's going to be a big part of like the new job that, job tech platforms will play going forward in a world of AI, in a world where there are, countless number of WhatsApp groups. So it's going to be a big part thinking about how you can embed trust into the core of your platform. So I think we can all agree that we've learned quite a lot. So I just want to say a very big thank you to Derek for sparing your time, prepping for this session, sharing, and most importantly, sharing what you've learned over the span of like building Crayon. I think this is what community is all about.
Thanks everyone that joined. I think we all have a really great opportunity building these platforms in Africa, to go up against the likes of LinkedIn with all of their hiring. And, if we don't just automate trust, we've got to earn the trust. And I think, as you said, trust is the hiring currency. So good luck to everyone. And thank you for the chat.